Welcome, everyone. I'm excited to have you here today. We're about to explore an important topic, Muzdalifah. This is the first slide of our presentation, and I want to give you a quick overview. We'll be discussing the significance of Muzdalifah, its role in the pilgrimage, and some key insights. So, let's get started and dive into this fascinating subject together. Let's discuss some important points about Muzdalifah and the related practices. When the sun sets, the imam and the people should start moving towards Muzdalifah at a normal pace. If someone fears overcrowding, they are allowed to leave earlier and ahead of the imam and the crowd, but it's crucial not to leave Arafah before the sun has set. You can also delay your departure to Muzdalifah until after sunset, and that is considered valid. Once you arrive at Muzdalifah, this moment is called Qaza. At this point, the imam should lead the congregation in performing Maghrib and Isha prayers together, with a single adhan and iqama. It's important to note that congregation is preferred here, and there are no optional prayers between these two. If anyone offers voluntary prayers, they should repeat the iqama and adhan, although some scholars say that repeating just the iqama is enough. A key point to remember is that if someone offers Maghrib prayer before reaching Muzdalifah, they need to repeat it, as long as dawn has not appeared yet. Abu Yusuf, a renowned scholar, said that such a prayer is still valid, but it's seen as a bit of a mistake because the person missed the sunnah of waiting until reaching Muzdalifah. The reason is that the prayer was offered at the correct time, but the act of delaying it was not recommended. Finally, the imam is responsible for leading the morning prayer in the last part of the night, during the early hours before dawn. This ensures the community performs their prayers at the appropriate times during this important phase of the pilgrimage. Now, let's take a closer look at the process of Muzdalifah and the specific guidelines for the Hanafi school regarding the stoning ritual at Jamarat al-Aqaba. Hanafi scholars advise that pilgrims should depart from Mina before the sun rises and begin with the stoning at Jamarat al-Aqaba. The key action here is to throw 7 pebbles at the Jamara from the base valley. These pebbles should be small chips, but larger stones can also be used as long as they aren't so big that they could cause harm to others. An important point to remember is that if someone throws from a higher position than the Aqaba and from a place farther from the base of the valley, the throw is still valid. Before throwing each stone, it is recommended to pronounce takbir, expressing the greatness of Allah. Alternatively, reciting tasbih instead of takbir is also valid, but in that case, the talbiyah should be paused. When it comes to the actual throwing technique, the stone should be placed behind the thumb, supported by the index finger. The throw should be made from a distance of about 5 arms length. If the throw is less than that, it's considered just tossing the stone, which is valid but discouraged because it's closer to simply dropping the stone at the feet of the Jamara, which isn't correct. Throwing the stones close to the Jamara is valid, but if you throw it farther away, it invalidates the action. Remember, throwing all 7 stones at once counts as just one throw, not 7. You can collect stones for Rami from anywhere, except directly from the Jamara itself. And finally, any material that is part of the earth, like clay, can be used for the Rami. So, in essence, proper technique, intention, and understanding these details ensure that your stoning ritual is valid and in accordance with the Hanafi school. Today, I will explain the key points about Muzdalifah and the related rituals. After sunset on the day of Arafah, when the night is well advanced, you should set out with the imam towards Muzdalifah. It's important to note that if you leave before him after sunset, you are not following the best course, so timing is crucial. Once you arrive there, your first concern is to perform the prayer shortly after stopping. You will pray the prayers with the imam at Muzdalifah, and these prayers are joined and shortened, which is a key aspect of the ritual. However, for the people of Muzdalifah, the rules are slightly different. When dawn approaches, it is recommended to pray the sub-prayer with the imam at the beginning of its time. Spending the night at Muzdalifah is also highly recommended, and dismounting from your mount is obligatory. Simply making the camel kneel is not enough. You must dismount completely. If someone fails to do this without a valid excuse until dawn, they owe a sacrifice. But if they have a valid excuse, then they are not required to do so. It's also recommended, in the well-known school, to stop facing the house when stopping at Muzdalifah. The Mashar, which is a mountain at Muzdalifah, holds significance as well. Shortly after sunrise, you should hurry towards Mina, crossing the valley of Muhasir quickly with your mount. Muhasir is the valley between Muzdalifah and Mina, and the path runs between them. If you are walking, it's encouraged to walk quickly as an act of devotion. However, women are advised not to hurry, maintaining modesty and ease. This act of hurrying reflects devotion and dedication to fulfilling the pilgrimage rituals properly, connecting us to the overall purpose of Hajj. Today, we continue our discussion with some important details about Muzdalifah and the rites of stoning. Stoning is performed from dawn to sunset on the day of sacrifice, and any missed days can be made up throughout the days of sacrifice. In fact, the night after each day is designated for making up that day's stoning if necessary. There's consensus that if someone misses the stoning, they are obliged to make it up, especially if it occurs at sunset on the fourth day of Mina. However, there's some disagreement about whether missing the Jamras invalidates the entire Hajj. One key condition for valid stoning is that the person must place the stone between their thumb and forefinger, or as some say, between the thumb and middle finger. The stones are then thrown one after the other, and simply throwing 7 pebbles at once, counting each as one, is not acceptable. The stones used should not be mud or minerals like iron. Most scholars agree the size should be about the size of a date stone. Very small stones, like gravel, are not sufficient. Additionally, if someone does not say the takbir, Allahu Akbar, while throwing, the act is still valid, but it is better to do so. It's also discouraged to break stones from larger rocks to make pebbles. Instead, picking clean, pure stones from the ground is preferred. When it comes to the actual act of stoning, it should be done from the bottom of the valley, which is the proper place for this ritual. Stoning the Jamra al-Aqaba, in particular, marks the conclusion of certain rites and makes everything lawful afterward, except for women and hunting. At this point, the pilgrim has completed the lesser form of ihram, signifying a transition in the pilgrimage journey. When the sun sets on the 9th day of Dhul Hijjah, those performing Hajj head towards Muzdalifah. At this point, they engage in dhikr, chanting labbaik, and proceed with calmness and dignity. It's important to remember that they join the sunset and nightfall prayers in the time of Isha at Muzdalifah. And of course, the intention to join these prayers must be made while it's still the time of the sunset prayer. Once they arrive at Muzdalifah, they stop, pray, and spend the night there. This is considered the best and most optimal practice. But if someone cannot spend the entire night there, they can still fulfill their obligation by being present during the second half of the night, even if only briefly. Spending the night simply means being there during that time, not necessarily staying all night. Now, if someone misses spending the night at Muzdalifah in this manner, and they do not return before dawn without a valid excuse, then they are required to slaughter, similar to what's done for Umrah. However, if the reason for missing the night is similar to reasons justified for not staying at Mina, then they are not obliged to slaughter. So, in summary, the key points are about the importance of being present at Muzdalifah during the night, making the correct intention, and understanding the conditions that determine whether slaughter is required or not. These details help us fulfill our Hajj obligations properly and connect to the overall theme of performing Hajj with sincerity and adherence to the Sunnah. Let's take a closer look at some valid reasons that might excuse a pilgrim from spending the entire night at Muzdalifah and still fulfill the rituals properly. Shafi mentions that if, for example, someone is busy standing at Arafah and doesn't arrive there until after sunset, that's considered more important than staying overnight at Muzdalifah. In such cases, they are not required to stay the whole night at Muzdalifah. Another example is if a pilgrim leaves Arafah after the middle of the night to go to Mecca to perform the obligatory Tawaf al-Ifada. If they are occupied with this important act, they might miss staying at Muzdalifah, and that's also deemed acceptable because performing the Tawaf takes precedence. In the morning, pilgrims should pray the dawn prayer at its earliest time, which is a key point. After that, they pick up 7 pebbles. It's important to remember, these are not 7 broken stones but 7 whole pebbles, about the size of a thumbprint or a broad bean. These are used for the stoning ritual at Mina. Lastly, after the dawn prayer, it's recommended, indeed, sunnah, to make a brief stop at a hill in Muzdalifah called Al-Mashur al-Haram. Some believe this refers to the entire Muzdalifah area, so this stop holds special significance in the ritual. All these points highlight how the rituals are flexible within certain bounds, emphasizing the importance of performing key acts of worship at the right times, even if some circumstances require adjustments. On this slide, we see the guidance from Muzdalifah, highlighting some important aspects of the pilgrimage rituals. First, it's recommended to face the Qibla during prayer, which helps in focusing and uniting the worshippers. Engaging in chanting, labbaik, making supplications, and invoking Allah through dhikr are emphasized, as these actions deepen spiritual connection. It's also advised to say a specific prayer. O Allah, as you have brought us to stand in it and shown us to it, so too give us success in your remembrance as you have guided us. Forgive us and show us mercy, emphasizing humility and trust in Allah's guidance and mercy. As the day progresses and the light increases, pilgrims should proceed to Mina with a sense of gravity and tranquility, maintaining focus before the sun rises. When collecting stones for the stoning ritual, it's important to pick them from anywhere except the designated stoning sites and mosques to keep the ritual pure and respectful. When starting to stone Jamrat al-Aqaba, pilgrims should cease chanting, labbaik, signifying a shift in focus from pilgrimage to the specific act of stoning. The correct approach is to stand in the middle of the valley, with Arafah to the right, Mecca to the left, and the stoning site directly in front. You should throw the pebbles one by one, saying Allahu Akbar with each throw, lifting your arms high, especially for males, and making sure to throw rather than flick the pebbles. Remember, throwing two at a time or all at once counts as just one pebble, so precision and patience are key. This process is not only a physical act, but also a spiritual one, symbolizing the rejection of evil and reaffirming our submission to Allah. Now, let's talk about the key points related to Muzdalifah and the rituals performed there. According to the Hanbali school, once you arrive at Muzdalifah, you should set off with the Imam. After reaching this sacred place, you perform the Maghrib and Isha prayers together, which is known as combining the two prayers. It's important to set up a camp and spend the night there, reflecting on the spiritual significance of this moment. Next, before dawn, you perform the dawn prayer during the last part of the night's darkness. After completing this, you head to Al-Mashur al-Haram, which is the designated standing place. Here, you should stand beside it and offer supplications, asking for Allah's blessings and mercy. You remain there until the day begins to glow, just before the sun rises. At that time, you move to the Valley of Masir. The next key action is to run at high speed to reach Mina. This is when the stoning ritual begins, specifically at Jamrat al-Aqaba. While stoning, you raise both hands, throw the pebbles, and utter Allahu Akbar. An important point to remember is that you should cease your talbiyah, the special prayer tune, at the start of the stoning ritual. So, in summary, the process involves traveling from Muzdalifah, performing combined prayers, spending the night in reflection, standing at Al-Mashur al-Haram, and then moving swiftly to Mina for the stoning, which marks a significant part of the pilgrimage. These steps highlight the devotion and discipline integral to the Hajj journey. On this slide, we see that there is no optional prayer in Muzdalifah. The narration from Salim, from his father, tells us that the Prophet, SAW, joined the Maghrib and Isha prayers there in Muzdalifah. What's important to highlight is that he combined these two prayers, which is a practice permitted during travel and especially during Hajj. Additionally, he performed each prayer with an iqamah, meaning the second call to prayer, indicating that these were separate, complete prayers, not just one combined prayer with a single call. Another key point is that the Prophet, SAW, did not offer any voluntary or sunnah prayers before or after these two obligatory prayers. This emphasizes that during certain moments of Hajj, especially in Muzdalifah, the focus is on the mandatory prayers without extra voluntary acts. This practice aligns with the overall theme of simplicity and devotion during Hajj, focusing on the core acts of worship without additional optional prayers, especially in specific sacred moments like this. It also shows us how the Prophet, SAW, modeled these practices for us to follow. When leaving Muzdalifah, it's interesting to note that during the time of the pagans, they used to wait until the sun had risen before departing. They would even say that they waited for the sun to shine on Thabir, which is the highest mountain in Mecca. However, the Prophet Muhammad, peace be upon him, contradicted this practice. He left Muzdalifah before sunrise, setting a different example for us. This highlights an important aspect of Islamic teachings, following the sunnah and the example of the Prophet, even if it goes against common customs of the time. It also reminds us that our practices should be rooted in the guidance of the Messenger, peace be upon him, especially during Hajj, to ensure we are fulfilling our religious obligations correctly. This detail, narrated by Umar, RAA, and recorded in Sahih al-Bukhari, emphasizes the importance of adhering to the sunnah in all aspects of worship. Now, let's talk about leaving Muzdalifah. According to Habiba, we used to set out from Muzdalifah to Mina very early in the dawn, when it was still dark. This shows how the pilgrims would begin their journey at the very first light, emphasizing the importance of timing in these rites. In the narration of Naked, it's expressed as we set from Muzdalifah in the darkness of the dawn. This highlights the same point. Leaving Muzdalifah early in the dark is a key part of the pilgrimage. This step is significant because it marks the transition from one sacred site to another, and it's done in a manner that demonstrates devotion and obedience to the Prophet's guidance. Connecting this to the overall theme, it underscores the discipline and synchronization required during Hajj, reminding us of the meticulous nature of these rites and their spiritual significance. On this slide, we see a beautiful example from the life of the Prophet Muhammad, letter FDFA, about leaving earlier during Hajj. Ibn Abbas, RAA, narrates that the Messenger of Allah, letter FDFA, sent him at night from al-Muzdalifah to Mina. What's important here is that he was sending someone to help with the weak members of his family, like women and children. This shows us how caring and considerate the Prophet, letter FDFA, was, making sure that even the most vulnerable members of his family were looked after. It also highlights the importance of planning and flexibility in our worship, especially when caring for others. Connecting this to our overall theme, it reminds us that Islam encourages us to be thoughtful and considerate in our religious practices, ensuring that everyone's needs are met, and that kindness is at the heart of our actions. Now, let's talk about reaching Muzdalifah, which is a crucial part of the Hajj journey. Abdurrahman bin Yamr ad-Daily recounts an important moment with the Prophet. He observed the Prophet in Arafat when some people from Najd approached him. They asked about the rites of Hajj, and the Prophet responded with clear guidance. He said that Hajj is considered complete once a person reaches Arafat. Specifically, if someone arrives at al-Muzdalifah before the Fajr prayer on the night of Jam, they have effectively fulfilled the Hajj requirement. The Prophet also mentioned the days spent in Mina, 3 days in total. But importantly, he clarified that if someone chooses to leave Mina after 2 days, there's no sin on them. Likewise, if they decide to stay the full 3 days, that's also permissible without any blame. What's especially significant here is that the Prophet made a man ride behind him to proclaim these instructions to everyone. This shows how vital, clear, accessible guidance is for pilgrims performing Hajj correctly. Overall, this narration highlights the flexibility within the rites of Hajj and the importance of reaching Muzdalifah at the right time, which is a key milestone in the pilgrimage. It emphasizes that the essence of Hajj is about fulfilling these fundamental requirements properly and with understanding.